more. Morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday morning, Ben at 10. We're really glad to be on here. We're going to just give this a minute as people join in, which means me and Greg can just kind of sit here in awkward silence for 40 seconds. Plus that bird. These sound effects, they're real. They're real.
And quite nice too, I must add.
Is that nice?
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss. We had tons of birds. I'll miss that in winter. Cool. Greg, thanks for supporting us. And he'll be posting some links in the chat. I'm going to post one. It's the registration link for some of the upcoming events. Hopefully you can see that, but Brian's going to post a few others for us. We've got Greg with us today because Greg has been helping lead our Journey to Racial Justice ministry team, steering us along through these first couple of phases. And so we invited Greg because we've got a few more initial fall offerings before we start flipping over into what the next phases of planning will be. But Greg, can you just, one, tell us your name, I suppose, but also tell us like what have we been doing so far? What's the ministry team been up to this point?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Greg McGruder, and I am the chair of the Journey to Racial Justice Steering Committee. So, as many of you know, this initiative was the brainchild of the board, management board at Foundry, and it was to make sure that the church was fulfilling its core goal of being a place that was racial diverse, a place that exhibited racial justice and equity. And so with that in mind, we set out to, ultimately what we want to do is create a strategy that will allow us to have this vision to fulfill that notion, but also a set of tactics that will be deeply embedded in every aspect of the church. So the first thing that we did was the survey earlier this summer that was followed by focus groups. And we've been following up in the last month or so with a series of educational gatherings and meetings. We've had a couple of sessions, Racial Justice 101, led by Kumea Shorter-Gooden, who is our consultant leading us on this journey. We've done another one. Ben did one last week, Racial Justice, a Biblical Perspective. And I spoke to a number of leaders of the small groups and the worship teams also, with the goal of giving them tools so they can talk about this issue with their groups. And so at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that everyone is able to discuss this topic comfortably. And also, we want people to take an active role at some point in helping us create this strategic plan and also implement the strategic plan. And so we'll be doing that probably in the end of the year, start working in that strategic plan. And with the idea that ultimately, once we do that, it'll be a 3-year strategic plan. And so that's it in a nutshell. And just want to say about 71 people have joined us so far in all of those workshops. 71, 80 some people, some households had multiple people on the call. And I want to say one more thing. So I think one thing that was a surprise to me was how many people have already been ahead of the curve in understanding this issue. And I think one thing that has stood out for me, particularly in these workshops, is that people wanted to have the tools so they could discuss this issue with relatives, with loved ones. That was a big concern for people. And some people said, I'm from the South. Everything that we're talking about in racial justice, my family's against it. But I want to be able to talk to them about it. And so I think that was one thing that's very interesting. People, as is typical with Foundry, people are seeking knowledge.
Absolutely. And I think I've noticed as we've kind of gone along, what you said, like people are coming in with with a good base of knowledge already, but maybe adding to their confidence around engaging the topic more openly, or in a setting that's less curated, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, and I think too that is very important because at the end of the day, you know, everybody's going to have to make this issue part of their lives, and most people are. So you can't have a curator kind of guiding you on this journey. You have to educate yourself to, do your own wayfinding, if you will. One aspect of this too. All of us in the steering committee know that so many people in their professional lives are dealing with this particular issue. I mean, we're in this time of racial reckoning. But, I think it was very important to us, and this was at the behest of one of our steering committee members, Gordon Olson. We were working on, all of this education and workshops. And he says, we have to make sure that we're looking at this through the filter of who we are. We are a religious institution, a spiritual institution. So it's very important that the guidelines and the tools that we give people are giving them the tools with that in mind. And that was one reason why Ben's presentation last week I thought was so important, a biblical perspective on racial justice and equity.
Yeah, and that's part of the other thing I noticed in these first few offerings for classes is they they are necessarily small, and just an initial jaunt into some of what we'll be doing for years to come when as it relates to cultural change. But like something like a biblical perspectives around racial justice, you have to dig back into everything from colonization and just the development of the ideas of white supremacy so much later on than the development of the biblical text. And there's so much to unpack. There's no way to do that in a 1 hour or an hour and 15 minutes. So we'll be back on those topics many times over. Well, Greg, this weekend we have one more event coming up around intersections of racial justice and LGBTQ justice. Do you want to say anything about what's that going to look like on Sunday, and where can people find some information to engage?
Yeah, we've got 4 members of the congregation who will be addressing this issue, and the title of this discussion is LGBTQ and racial justice. Do the twain meet? And there are so many people who think that these issues are diametrically opposed. One has nothing to do with the other. You know, I tend to think otherwise, and I probably shouldn't say that since I'll be moderating the discussion, and you want it to go where it is. But as our consultant who we work with, Kumea, quotes an acquaintance of hers who always says, "Isms travel in packs," and you look at, I think it's important to talk about that now because one term that's come up so frequently in the last 2 years is the whole notion of intersectionality. These none of these issues stand alone. All of these isms are interrelated, and you can look at Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and Dr. Kendi spoke at Foundry last year. And if you look at that book, it's kind of his own personal journey to becoming an anti-racist, and he breaks anti-racism down and intersects it with all of these other issues. So I think that's what we want to address on Sunday.
Great. And we put the registration link there in the chat for folks. You'll be able to register. It's a webinar on Zoom, so we'll do it after service, starting at or slightly after 12:30 this Sunday afternoon. And then the following week on the 31st, we'll have a gathering up for a discussion around Ibram Kennedy's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so it's a guided discussion that you can join us for virtually the following weekend. So I hope you'll take a look at all of those events that are coming up. In November, we'll have one more addressing whiteness and those ideas, what that is, how it came about. And then we'll start looking into the next phases after we get through what's going to be a busy holiday season for everybody. So please take a look at those. The other things that you're supposed to be doing is voting, wearing your mask, and keeping each other safe. So why don't you do all of those and make sure that you come hang out with us again. Greg, thank you so much for coming on this morning, taking the time to talk with us. I'm sure we'll be back with more members of the JRJ team to continue to talk about this, because this is long haul work, and I'm glad we're underway. Go ahead, Greg.
Say one thing, in the meantime, if you can't make it to any of the sessions, there is a very robust resource site. So go to rjr at foundry.umc.org, or you can go to the Foundry website and you'll see a link to the Journey to Racial Justice, and click on that and you'll see all sorts of resources. We've got books, magazine articles, podcasts, resources for families and children as well.
Excellent. Yeah. So great ways to continue your self-guided learning if you're not able to match up with some of these scheduled events. But really good work by the Journey to Racial Justice team putting together those lists for us, and with help from the Foundry Library. So thanks everybody for your help. Greg, thank you. We will see you soon. Everybody have a good Friday. Bye-bye.